So this lesson is to get you ready for the test. So the test is going to be on Thursday. You need to come to the college. You need to come to the college and do that test. The test, the test will be HTML and CSS. You will have to create 2 web pages, and you will have to submit those to the Dropbox. In the work that you do in your test, you need to put your name and your student number in it. All right. So make sure you do that. Otherwise, how do I know? Now, how do I know you haven't sort of just got it from someone else? Well, I will be trying to reduce chances for you sharing information. So, for example, some of the conditions of the test will be that you'll not be able to communicate or use your the network to um, communicate with each other. So if I see anything on your screen that looks like you're copying something from somebody else, well, that's going to raise an issue with what we call academic integrity, right? And so that means a write-up and zero and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I've done in the past, and I'm really thinking about doing it in this test, is start you off in the test with network connection, and you will download the test instructions. Once those are on your computer, I may go and disconnect the network from you, and that way there's no more sharing until the end of the lesson, and then you will do your upload. That has worked for me in the past, and I'm considering that, though. Um, I that hasn't really run past the other teachers in a positive way. So I mean, I don't know. They seems like a lot of work. Some people seem to think. But anyways, that's what I'm thinking to do. So don't be thinking of coming. So and so will just do it, and I'll copy it, and I'll put my name in it. No, I don't think that's going to happen. All right. So all right. About the 2 pages that you have to do, you should be able to use CSS in a very good way. So in other words, you will have to take some raw text, which I'm not going to give you the text. You're going to type it. Looks like you can take that text and you're going to style it. Put emphasis in, do other kinds of styling. You're going to have to create a table, and in the table you're going to have to style different parts of the table in different ways. Now, none of that is new. All right, so all of that you've done before. Please have a look at the recent labs to make sure that you can do the stuff in the labs. Now, also about that styling, you will need to do what we call internal styling, but not external or inline. Inline styling is not going to be acceptable. So what does that mean? Inline styling, I'm sure, is when you're putting the style inside the tags, as opposed to internal styling, where you have 2 style tags in the head, and then in between those 2 style tags, you put your CSS there, which is going to then have to refer to different parts of the document, which we call elements, which some of which you will have to differentiate if you're in a table, right? So if you got 3 columns in the table, right? How are you going to differentiate column 3 from column 1? And so you'll probably use IDs to do that. Now, we have done that, but let's have a look. So, for example, if you look at today's lab, so that's the Dropbox. I should be not looking at the Dropbox, but looking at the lab itself. So if you look at the exercise that I'm going to ask you to do, and it's not due until next week. So, I mean, I'm not adding pressure to you of something else to do before the test. No, you can do this next week. All right. But by giving it to you, there's some things in there that might be helpful to you in next week. So, for example, you would need to be able to do a table like this. Actually, in the test, you'd have to do a table like this and then color these different headings in different colors. So hopefully you can do that. But notice the other thing that's happening in this, and we went at length about this last time, was the row span. You should be able to do row span and column span, which there's not too much. There's no column span here, is there? Oh, this should. Yeah. We could put a column span there if we just turned that into phones or something. But yeah, I think we haven't. So let's just have a look at how some of that is achieved. So we got the contact page. Yeah, yeah, okay, here we do have the column span. Yeah, you see the column span here in the main characteristics. You need to be able to do that. So we got a table here with two columns and multiple rows, and we've column spanned the first thing. Now we've done that also in another exercise that I gave you um, not long ago. So you should be okay with this. All right, but let's just have a look at this quickly. So as I said, if we look at the if we look at the and I'll do it in Notepad because that's what you can expect in the exam. Though we've been working in code, which is really cool, the other teachers don't like that, and so I have to be consistent. And so let's look at it in Notepad, which you might be restricted to. So here we got a table, and at the top there we've got that main characteristics, and it is column spanning 2 columns, and that allows us to have this. Yeah. So which one is this? This is the if I open it, that allows us to have this look here, which is 2 columns for the main characteristics. There's some other stuff going on there, of course. Main characteristics has a particular type of styling applied to it. So if you look at that, that would be in so what have we done in that table? All right, let's go back. Sorry. Okay, we've got this ID called main. So that's kind of important. You should be able to use an ID and you should be able to use a class. And I think that in order to sort of identify a particular part of your website. And so here we're going to identify just the first row, separating so that we can treat it different than the other rows so that we can give it its own color for its text. And so how we've done that is uh, we've got this thing called main. There's our ID main. And what we've done is we've applied a particular color to it. We've done center aligning for that, which the other ones have not been, right? If we look at the others, they are all left aligned. So there's a difference in the way that we've aligned those things. Now, all the rest of that web page is stuff that you've done before, but this might be something just a little bit new. And so that's worth sort of looking at. Okay, so what have we done? We've used an ID to identify a particular element in our HTML, and then we've styled that to be different than the other ones. You will absolutely need to be able to do that in the test. I can tell you that now, right? And to a greater extent than in this example, though that example is kind of worth doing. Um, color, I mean, with the colors, I'm, there, the cadet blue color. You know what? The color thing is kind of, it's almost artistic, right? And so we've got so many options for doing the colors. If we look at this HTML, uh, you can see there that we've got the color. We're using this way of doing it. With some colors that are standard colors, we can just say the name of the colors. With other colors, we're using other methods of doing it. So we've got this way. This is a hexadecimal numbering way of doing it. We've got other ways. I mean, I don't really care how you do it. You come up with your own way of getting the of getting the color right if you want. But I'm sure that you would have come up with the idea now that there are palettes that you can sort of refer to get your color right, and you can just sort of Google that if you want in between now and then. Although I don't want to see people Googling during the test, and you should expect that it's quite possible that during the test I will disconnect you from the network. That could possibly happen. That's what I'm thinking. All right, so that's kind of the seller asked a question that I do want to answer, which is no page for CSS. No, do internal styling like this. So I have a style tag in the head and put all your styling there because there's only 2 pages. All right, so and they are going to be styled differently. Yeah, so we're just going to use internal styling. This is the way I want you to do your styling. So there's some other things to look at there in your styling. Make sure you're doing something like this. Be careful. The padding. There are actual specific instructions, I think, in the test that that will give you specifications of padding to use and fonts to use and stuff like that. So pay attention to them and make sure that you do apply padding. You know what padding does. It's going to uh, padding is going to give you this space between the text inside the table and the border around that text. And that's kind of important for the look of things. So make sure you've got that too when you do it. Also, make sure you put your name and all of that type of stuff in it. All right, so that's that page. The second page there, yeah, what it's got is some good things because what we did here is we've got a fixed width for the mobile and the landline. And so we're separating the way that we do the styling of those two columns as opposed to the other. And so that allows us to use, we could use IDs or we could use class. If we use a class, then we can style them both together. Because remember with IDs, we can only, they only work for one element in the whole page. But if you use a class, you can apply that to more than one element. So let's have a look at that. So that would be in the contact support. I'm going to open that with Notepad. This is an answer that I've got that I'm showing you. That's why. All right. So what we can see is this thing here that I was just talking to you about. You can use a class kind of in the way that you used an ID. All right, we're using a class kind of in the way, but the difference is that we can use it for multiple elements. So here we have a table. We have three columns in the table. One column is no class is applied to it. The other two columns have the same class applied to them. So they get to be styled. And of course, when we do a column, when we do a class, we use dot. When we do an ID, we use a hash. When we do a class, we use a dot. And so here we're using a dot so that we style those exactly the same. The other one is not style, is no width is given to it. And so its width, we could allow that width to be whatever, I suppose. It's going to take up the rest of the space. And that's actually done with this thing called hunt. We can set width to a px. This will come up in the test, right? You can set the width to a px, so you can say, okay, I want my width to be exactly 1,500 pixels. Or you can say, well, what if I just want it to take up the rest of the space? So what this doing here is setting the width to 100%. Our table is going to take up the whole space of the page, and it'll take up all the space. So let me open that. Here's our contact support page. See what happens when I change the width. Okay, so the table takes up the whole width of the page, regardless of what that width of the page is. And so but the mobile column and the landline column, they're fixed. They don't get to change their width. And that's been done here. We set the width there with a px. But here we set the width of the table with a %. And so the other column is just going to vary in width. So this is a variable width sort of table. And that's how that's achieved, by using a percentage instead of a pix. And we use that a bit, and you'll see a bit of that coming up as we go forward into some further labs. So I hope that sort of helps you. There is a specific question in the test, takes up the rest of the space. If you ever see that, percent. All right, so hopefully that's going to help you a lot. There's some other stuff in there in formatting the text. And so let's just have a quick look at that. So we made our font family sans serif. We've done our colors of our headings. We used font weight, which made it kind of big. And we've got a margin. Now, the thing that's really cool here is in this element, we've used this command here, which is the border bottom. The border bottom 2px, that allows us to have this line underneath each of those headings. So that line under each of those headings is done with this thing here, border bottom. And you see it's a 2px border bottom underneath the element. And here's its color, which is the same color, I think, as if we go and look, well, doesn't really say there, right? So it should be maybe
TH.
the body doesn't. Oh yeah, here it is. H1. There's the color. It's the same color as the heading. All right, so that's kind of a lab that you can look at. I'm not saying that you have to do that before the test. You don't have to, but I would kind of recommend that, especially if you're looking at your thing. What on earth do I study for the test? Well, there's one thing that you can study. I would say look at that. Look at lab 3. Okay, so this is lab 4, right? Look at lab 3, and then look at that. Now, while we're at it, I got one more here for you. This is a nice little exercise. Let's just look at this one. And again, I'm recording this one. So here's an example of a table where we're doing a bunch of row spanning and column spanning, and then we can see the result. Now you've done one of these. You've done one of these, but here's another one. Okay, and so in this case, we've got one column which covers 5 rows, another column that covers 3 rows, and another one that covers 2 rows. And have we got any column span going on? No, this is just all row span. How does this look? So we created this little table here, and this is how it was done. So let's just have a look and see if we can sort of understand that, right? So the first row, all right, there's no spanning, right? And so we've got this thing here. But if you look at the first row, do we give it, right? Just looking to see how we've identified that so that we can get it a different color. Oh yes, because it's the header. Yes. So this has got the TH tags. So the first row is the heading. So with the TH tags, we give the background of black and the color white, and that gives us that heading. That's nice. So the rest of them are other rows. And so for the next row, you see the row span 5. How that works is that gives us, we've got the word or the contents elementary, and it spans 5 rows. All right. And then as part of that first row, then we say, let's say Voltaire, and that spans 3 rows. And then we get down to the stuff that doesn't span rows, right? So the 1, 2, 3, well, we're going to do the 1, and the 2006. So the next row is just going to be these two things, right? Just the number and just the date. And so that's row 1, row 2, row 3 is just the number, just the date. Then when we get to row 4, again, we're not going to have the first thing because that only appeared on the first row. So now we're going to have our next 2 rows are going to be spanned together, and they're all going to be Lycée Bonaparte. Then the first one of those is going to be 4 in 2010, and then the next one is going to be 5 in 2000. So that's a good example of row span. It doesn't really show column span, but column span we saw in the previous thing there with the main. And so hopefully that won't be too strange or too tricky for you guys. All right, so I'm going to kind of stop there, I think, and take this as a assignment to add to lab 3 to get you ready for the test. For each of these cells, can you make them a different color? Try that. And the other thing is, for each of the cells, can you add some padding? Add some padding and try different colors. And I think that will help you in the test, right? So there you have some example that you could do. Yeah, I got like 20 students here, which is good, but I'm not sure I marked everybody present. So I'm just checking out. Muhammad Adnan, are you here? I see Muhammad Osama's here. Muhammad Abad. There's Muhammad Asaba. Lubna, yes. And who else? Jamil, yes. Habiba. Ali Khalil, Ali Dara, same. And Ahmed Abdullah Al Say. Ahmed Al Say. Yep. Wow. That's a good attendance. Only a couple people didn't show up. Muhammad Adnan, not here? No. Okay. So, all right. So, as I said, be ready. You can. Yeah, I hope I'm not. Be ready for if in the test. Be
Sure.
ready. Make sure that you can do some tables. Somebody just asked me about bringing the
Sir,
paper. You can bring it. Yes. Question.
yes, I'm Ali. I'm here.
Okay, Ali. Um, which Ali? Ali Dara. I got you. I think. Is there another Ali? Oh, yeah. Just finally, you can bring a piece of paper. Yes, A4 piece of paper with whatever you write on it. You can type on it, whatever. That's what you can bring. Don't bring jump drives, USB, whatever you want to call them. Don't bring those. Don't be thinking about sort of copying things from the internet, stuff like that. No. It's quite possible that I might disconnect that network cable. I'm thinking on that. So you should think that your exam situation is going to be that you don't have access to any kind of sharing, and that's the way that's the idea of the test, and so that's the way I'm going to be trying to do it. um,
Sir, I have a question.
A4 paper does everything, yeah, inshallah. Yes, go ahead.
Like you said, we have to submit the